I'm currently making a new series of videos that allows me to go further and further into the lore and backstory of some of Scream's most iconic serial killers that have ever donned the Ghostface mask. This type of content comes from comments by directors, cast and crew, and is pieced together through my own writing. To make sure you don't miss out on this awesome Scream content, be sure to hit subscribe and make sure you sign up for notifications so you don't miss a single update. In today's episode, we're taking a closer look at 1/3 of the Ghostface killers from Scream 6, Ethan. So, it was revealed a couple of months ago by Radio Silence that Ethan and Detective Bailey were responsible for the murder of Mrs. Bailey, the wife of Wayne and the mother of Richie, Quinn and Ethan. This is a seriously dark turn for these killers. So how did all this transpire? What purpose did this event serve to the backstory of this family? Sit back and chill as I read you guys through the moment that Ethan murdered Mrs. Bailey. Richie would have done it. Richie wouldn't have hesitated. She doesn't understand what we're doing. These words repeated in Ethan's head continuously as he sat at the edge of his bed, contemplating what was about to happen. His dad had been pushing Ethan to practice more. He knew when Quinn stabbed the dog before Ethan that he wouldn't hear the last of it. Quinn seemed to fight for their dad's affection even more since Richie was murdered. It's like she was desperately campaigning to be his new favourite. So with all this, Ethan had treated their practice sessions as a huge competition. But Dad asked me to do this to Mum, is what Ethan continuously told himself. Ethan's mum discovered how they were going to avenge Richie's death. It all started with her. It all has to end with her. But Mrs. Bailey disagreed. She wouldn't say it, especially not in front of Wayne, but she truly felt Wayne's constant excusing of Richie's behaviour and the exposure Richie had to all of the stab shit was likely what pushed him over the edge. She blamed herself, not her, for this. Wayne had spoken to Ethan closely one night. "I really need your help, son," he said, inviting and loving towards his last remaining son. Ethan was all ears. "Your mother, I feel like she's slipping further away from the family." Ethan felt the same. She wasn't overly involved in the rehearsals and rarely mentioned Richie at all. "If Richie was around, I'd discuss this with him, but I have you," said Wayne. Ethan felt more important than ever. He was beyond happy his dad felt he could talk to him like this. Sometime after that chat, Wayne discussed with Ethan once again. He told him he felt Mrs. Bailey was up to something, as he had caught her discarding some of Richie's old belongings. Several nights later, he heard them arguing, which resulted in Ethan's mum crying behind the bathroom door. Wayne spoke to Ethan the following morning. "She's going to blow this operation. She hates you being close to me. I just need my son right now though," were Wayne's words to Ethan. The final talk they had was moments ago. Wayne told Ethan he was planning on confronting his mother about her disagreement over the plan to get revenge on her. Ethan wasn't sure what was happening, but he had got to his feet and listened at the door. The doorway was dimly lit from downstairs. The entire room was cloaked in blue darkness, as though a dark shadow was truly about to coat the house. "It's wrong, we made him this way," spat Ethan's mum from downstairs. He listened carefully. "I won't let you raise another monster like you're doing with Ethan," she barked. Suddenly, there was the sound of a struggle. A monster? Richie was murdered. How was Ethan becoming a monster when all he wanted to do was defend his brother, impress his father? This was it. This is what Ethan's dad spoke of. "You haven't impressed me yet, Ethan, but when you do, you'll know. We both will. The time will come, son. You can be just like your brother," said Wayne to Ethan just 10 minutes ago. The struggle continued downstairs. Wayne began yelling in pain. Suddenly, Ethan's mum let out a scream. Ethan opened the door to his room and stepped towards the landing rail. He looked down, and sure enough, he saw the shadowy silhouette of his parents fighting. Ethan's mum sounded like she was struggling. He heard a large bang, followed by his dad yelling in pain. Just then, his mum ran down the corridor and towards the front door. It was locked. She turned frantic and proceeded to run upstairs. Ethan stepped back inside his room, out of view. Ethan's mum darted past Ethan's room. She went silent. He heard his dad scrambling around downstairs. He kept shouting, "Lynn! Lynn!" Ethan left the room and began looking down the corridor where his mum could have gone. Suddenly, his dad arrived. "Did you see where she went?" He spoke as blood dripped down his forehead. Ethan pointed in the opposite direction. "That way." Wayne looked down the opposite end of the corridor. "Get your shit together, she's going to try and stop us." He walked off, shouting her name once again. Ethan stepped back inside his room for a moment. Then he returned to the corridor and walked towards the only room to the right side of the house. He pushed the door open quietly. As he began looking round, he whispered softly, "Mum, are you okay?" With some hesitation, Ethan's mum emerged from behind a large stack of boxes, holding her bat in her hand. "Can I trust you, Ethan?" she said. Ethan stared at his mother. She didn't seem the same. Her stance was different. Gone was the warmth of this woman. Stood before him was someone who was apprehensive, withdrawn. She clearly didn't trust Ethan. "I know what he made you do, killing the dogs, the animals. It was never you, Ethan," she said softly, just as she stepped forward. Ethan looked down at the floor. He stared out of space for a moment, just as she touched his face. "Don't be like them. Don't end up like your father. You will never be like Richie, Ethan." She said it, exactly what Ethan thought. No one in this family would ever allow him to get close to Richie, except maybe his dad, if he helped him. Ethan looked back up at his mum. She placed her arms around Ethan's neck. "That girl doesn't deserve all this either, Ethan." As she rested on her son's shoulder, she gasped. She jolted. She looked into his eyes. He looked back. Lynn was no longer seeing her son. Instead, she saw evil in his eyes, a psychotic rage that filled his trembling face. "She deserves what's coming to her," spoke Ethan in his mother's ear. "The same way you deserve this," he whispered sinisterly. He twisted the knife, which was rested inside her stomach, viciously. Lynn dropped to the floor just as Wayne burst through the door. He began laughing. "You got us, son," he said through his chuckles. Ethan switched the position of his blade, knelt down, and began a stabbing frenzy into Lynn's body. Crimson spat everywhere, pouring in all directions, spilling onto the carpet. Wayne continued to laugh, just as Ethan became totally lost in his own rage. Blood splattered on his face. As he forced himself to stop, he looked down at Lynn's body. Wayne was still in a fit of laughter behind him. "That's my boy, well done, son," he said, tapping his back. Ethan turned to his dad. "I'm going to make you proud, for Richie," spoke Ethan. Wayne placed his arms around his son. "If you mess with us, you die. Always remember that." The darkness filled the room. As the bloody mess of Mrs. Bailey became coated in shadow, whatever was to come next would change everything. Forever. Adding this layer to Ethan, I believe, helped us see the influence that his father had over him, but at the same time this chapter allows us to get clear insight into how disturbing and dark the family's dynamic was. I hope you guys have enjoyed this chapter. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like, share, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on more of these untold backstories from the killers of the Scream franchise. I'll see you guys in the next video.